In this topic, we are going to deal with a simple but very important concept in JavaScript. And that is the question of how things are passed in JavaScript, by value or by reference. So when I assign a variable to another variable, is it passing the value of that variable, or is it passing the reference to the memory location? Well, the answer is simple, but it can create some confusion. In JavaScript, all things are passed by value. But in the case of a variable that stores an object, as opposed to a primitive value, the value that is passed is actually a reference to that object. So let's elaborate on this by looking at some code. So let me go ahead and resize this, and then I'll also open up the console here so we can see what happens. And first thing I'm going to do is declare a variable, and I'm going to assign it a primitive value, 10. Then I'm going to declare another variable, and I'm going to assign that variable the first variable I declared. So num2 now equals num1. Then I'm going to increment num1 like this. And then what we want to do is take a look at both of those variables. So we'll do num1, num2, like that. Now, if we're passing by value here in this line, then num2 will get the value of 10. When we increment num1, num1 will be 11, num2 will still be 10. So let's take a look at that. We'll save that. And we get 11 for num1, so it incremented, and we still get a 10 for num2. So it did not increment. So this here is not passing a reference to the memory location where 10 is stored. It's basically passing the value. The value 10 is then stored in num2. And so we're able to deal with those in two separate ways. So num1 has a memory location, and num2, instead of pointing to that memory location, it creates a new memory location and stores the value that is passed in from num1. So that's what's happening with primitives. Now we need to take a look at objects. So now I'm going to declare a simple object. obj1, we'll set that equal to the object. We're just going to have one property here, number, and we're going to assign it a value of 10. Now we'll do the same thing. We'll declare obj2, and we're going to set that equal to obj1. Then we will increment the number property. So we'll mutate this object by incrementing the number property of obj1. And then let's just log to the console both of those. So we'll do obj1, comma, obj2, like that. All right, let's save that and see what we got. All right, need to resize this a little bit. We can't see the whole thing. Now, as we can see with the objects, both of them show 11. Both obj1 and obj2 show 11. And that's because in the case of an object, when we do this assignment here, obj1 actually stores as its value a reference to the location of that object, of this object right here. And so a reference to that location is placed in obj2. Since they both have the same reference, whenever we modify this object by incrementing it, we incremented it here, they both show the same object. So we could have done obj2.number and incremented that, and obj1 and obj2 would still show 11. It wouldn't matter which one we did because they're both referencing the same object. Now think about why this is important. If we're using large objects and we're passing them in this way, that could take up a lot of memory if we created a new memory location each time we assigned an object. And so because objects can be large, it just passes the reference, or it just stores the reference and then it passes that value, that reference, to the new variable that we're assigning it to. All right, now let me do something else here that will show you a little bit the nature of objects. So if I create obj3, and I'm going to set that equal to number 10. So an object that is exactly the same as this one. And I'm also going to comment out that line there. Okay? Then we'll go ahead and save that. Now what I want to do is come down here and do obj1 equal to obj2. Notice what it returns. It returns a true. But if obj1 equal obj3, that is false. They both have the same data. obj1 and obj3 have the same data, as we can see here. They look like they're exactly the same. But what we're comparing is the reference. And since the reference is not the same, they're not equal to one another. Now, just in case you're wondering, will loose equality make any difference? No, it does not. It still comes back false. All right, now before we're done here, remember we talked about everything being an object. So let's just see if this applies to arrays as well. So I'm going to create array 1. I'm going to set that equal to 1, 2, and 3 in the array. And then I'm going to create array 2. I'm going to set that equal to array 1, like that. Now let's modify array 1. Let's use push to add another element, 4. And then let's just log those to the console, both array 1 and array 2, like that. Okay, let's save that. I'm going to go back here, and you can see that both of the arrays reflect this exact same data. And that's because, once again, an array is an object. And so the value that is inside of ARR1 is actually a reference to where this is stored. And so it passes that reference as a value, passes it to ARR2. And so when we modify one of them, whether it be ARR1 or ARR2, it doesn't matter. When we modify one of them, it is reflected by both variables because they're both pointing to the same object. So very important concept here. Now, what if you really did want to copy an object to a new variable? In other words, you wanted to create a second object. How would you go about doing that? So you didn't want to pass the reference as a value and have it point to the same object, but you wanted two objects that looked exactly the same, yet were different. So that when you updated one, it didn't update the other. Would you need to create both of them in full separately? Well, actually, there's a way to do that. We'll take a look at that in the next topic.